when a sign arrives, and however that may be, it's always one particular message, and it's you are on the right path. Like that is the purpose of the message. So a lot of people are like, does this sign mean it's the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do? But the signs only arrive when you're in alignment.
Well, Kyle, one question, as you know, that I ask every guest who comes on the podcast is, when did you spiritually awaken? What's your story?
I mean, I feel like I've had a number of spiritual awakenings. I'm sure you can probably agree that there's several moments where you have your aha wake up moment, but then you have these other awakenings that kind of take you to where you're supposed to be. And I feel like my first awakening actually happened very young. It was after having this virus called Guillain-Barré syndrome. It's a nervous system virus. Basically, it's a kind of offshoot of the flu. And I remember waking up maybe around 3.5 years old, nearly 4, and I just could not walk. I just could not get out of bed. My parents rushed me into hospital, and a few weeks later, we found out I had Guillain-Barré syndrome. And at the same time, my grandmother was also going through a lot with her own health and her well-being. And all of a sudden, there's 2 people in the same house, both in wheelchairs. And my mother was a carer for both of us. And it was around that time I started to think differently. And, you know, when you're a kid, you just love to be in amongst everything that's happening, or I certainly wanted that to happen. And I would not be able to run into the next room, so I would imagine myself running into the next room and listening to the conversation or seeing what was on the stove, and just always visualizing that. And I actually kind of heightened my senses to the point where I actually to this day can still hear people whisper. Like if people are whispering, and I'll be able to hear a lot of the conversation. If someone's cooking in their house and then comes to visit, I can smell it off of them. You know, it's like there's just heightened awareness. And so I'd been growing my awareness to the point where I was being able to feel beyond the room. And then a few months down the line, after going through physio and learning how to walk again and getting ready for school to start, my grandmother was moved from our family home to hospital. And I remember a neighbor called Margaret, who was this devout Catholic that kind of helped kickstart my love for all things candles and prayer, looking after me. And she put me to bed. And I remember going to sleep with the light on and then waking up through the night with the light off. But my grandmother was sitting at the bottom of my bed. And I remember just being like, yay, she's come home. And she seemed well. And she flipped me on my belly and she just tickled my back. You know, like I loved my back being scratched when I was younger. And I remember just falling asleep feeling so loved. And then the next morning, I remember my mum opening up my blinds and my curtains in my room and getting me ready for the day. And I said, hey, Mum, where's Nana? And she couldn't answer me. And it was then later on revealed that my grandmother had went to heaven. Wow. So from that very early age of like 4, you know, I've had this deep questioning, you know, what happens to us when we die? And if we go to heaven, you know, everyone in church and all these places tell you you're not going to see your family member again, but I still did. So I had this deep questioning, like, if my grandmother died, then why was I able to see her? So I feel like the virus and the experience of being paralyzed helped me extend my awareness to the point that when my grandmother's physical body died, I was able to sense beyond the body and still connect with her soul. And I believe her coming back to see me was my initial awakening, my aha moment to see that there is more than meets the eye. And then that really just kind of took me on this journey where my entire life I've always just questioned the big things, you know, like what's the purpose of our being? I think that's cute. I quite like that. I feel like our dogs chatting is just the most exciting part of the day.
They are. They're like, sod this. They don't need to record a podcast.
So yeah, I feel like the questioning of what happens to us when we die has just really followed me my entire life, and eventually that kind of opened up the doors to angels in my teenage years.
Amazing. And, obviously for some people, seeing their grandma sat at the end of the bed, like I would be, like, what the hell? Obviously, you didn't know that
I
she had
didn't know
passed.
she died yet, you
No.
know.
So
Yes.
when you started knowing that she had passed and seeing people who had passed, did that feel comfortable or did it feel scary or
Yeah,
strange?
yeah, I was really scared after you hear feedback from people. Right, at first I wasn't scared. You know, there was nothing to concern me. But when you start hearing feedback from other people saying, "Oh, you're not supposed to see dead people. You know, you're not supposed to have these experiences. You're not supposed to be able to communicate with people after they die." And that's when I started to get really scared and kind of like concerned, but it didn't make it go away, you know. I remember this one time, my mom was a mobile hairdresser and she would take me places when she was, you know, after school when she still had like perms to take out or whatever. And I remember going to this house one time and I was like petting the dog and chatting to the dog. Like I love dogs, as you know, and I was just like obsessed with this dog and no one else could see the dog. And I was going, "Hi, Benji," and like chatting to this dog. And the woman who owned the house had a dog called Benji, and I was like speaking to it. You know, so there was things like that happened, and people thought this kid is wired or weird or wonderful, and and yeah, I just took it in my stride. But it wasn't until my teenage years when I really felt out of place in the world, you know, like a lot of teenagers do, you know. But I felt so out of place. I just genuinely didn't fit in. I had this deep interest in the unseen, and I felt like I hadn't found my friends or my people. And I remember this TV show came on, and it was called Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and it genuinely just lit me up in ways that I cannot express. Like I really feel like Buffy saved me. And it was through watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer that I feel I had my next awakening, to like look into the supernatural. And not only is the supernatural out there and something that you can look into, you can actually have a direct encounter with it. And it was Buffy that sent me down the road of crystals and magic first, which then led me into energy healing. And then eventually a family friend who was a Reiki practitioner had said, "Hey, have you ever considered the idea of angels?" And I was like, I feel a little bit opposed to the idea of angels because um, a few weeks prior to that, I was in Sunday school and I went to church my entire life. Like, you know, I was the kid that changed the sheets when everyone was singing the hymns, you know. So I grew up going to church, and my Sunday school leader, who happened to be my cousin, said to me, "Kyle, it's God or Buffy."
Mm.
And I chose Buffy.
Of course.
And so when someone said the angel word to me, I was like, just a little bit Christian. And she then said, "No, angels are more than that. They're acknowledged in pretty much every religion of the world, and every spiritual tradition has a similar idea to them. You have one. It can speak to you. Why don't I come up? Why don't you come upstairs with me and I'll let you pick an angel card?" And that was my aha moment. I was like, "What? We can speak to angels through cards?" You know? And so I remember going upstairs and I picked my first card and it said synchronicity. And I remember running downstairs to Google what synchronicity meant afterwards, because it wasn't a word that I had heard about before, you know. And I learned that it was about a perfect chain of events that led to some sort of circumstance. And I was like, "Whoa, I wonder what that meant." But now, upon reflection, when I look back, I realized that was the synchronicity. That was the opportunity to say yes. And I feel like that's when I was hired by the Angels to be like a spokesperson for them and to kind of make them cool again. make angels cool again.
I love it. Well, you've certainly done that, Kyle, and more for sure. So, you started out as one of the youngest angel card readers. What was your first angelic encounter and how did it change your path? I know you've kind of touched upon that a little bit, but how did we go from the Kyle who's experiencing all these incredible, wild things to,
Mm.
oh, I met the sun and I'm, an angel card reader?
Yeah, so the after that first encounter with the angel cards, that family friend actually bought me a pack of angel cards for my 15th birthday. And we're now the August after that. So I get them in the February and we're now in the August and I'm like hitting the ground running. I'm like going to the local spiritualist church 3 times a week. I'm going to meditation classes. I'm studying crystal therapy. So I'm like, I go all in. And I was at a family friend's barbecue. I didn't want to go, first of all. Like, like all teenagers, you don't want to go with your parents to like a barbecue. But anyway, I'm going. And my mum said, why don't you bring your angel cards and you can set up a little stall and do readings for everybody? And I was like really enchanted by the idea. But the truth is, I was way too young to be doing this. I had no life experience and I certainly hadn't learned diplomacy skills in order to be able to deliver information. But here I am at this family friend's barbecue and there was this gay couple there. It was my mum's friend and her friends from work that came and that's who I'm doing a reading for. And it was the second reading that really changed my entire life. And this is where it all kind of opened up. I was doing a reading. I'm outside. I said to the guy, put your hands on top of the cards and just, in your mind, think about anything you would like help with or clarity on. And I still do that to this same day, the same way. And I then said in my head, the kind of prayer that every intuitive person has ever said in their life, if you're out there, give me a really great message so I can show this person that I'm really accurate at what I do, No one likes to admit they say that, but we do say it. And so I'm like, Angel, if you're there, come on through. And then all of a sudden, I just randomly start hearing Destiny's Child Survivor in my mind. And it's like, I'm a survivor. And I'm like, whoa, that's intense. And I was like, can you hear that? And the guy's like, no, I can't hear anything. And I was like, I can hear Destiny's Child Survivor. Now, segue, I've also been watching Most Haunted on television. And I don't know if you ever watched that show,
Yeah, I
but they're
did.
always like, show yourself. So then I'm like, maybe I'm getting a message. So I said, if there is an angel here, show your presence. And all of a sudden, like out of nowhere, there's this light moving towards me, and it just all of a sudden becomes this gigantic pillar of light. And my arm hair is standing on end already when I think about it. And this presence just arrived and it's almost like time stood still. There's this like golden figure like looking at me with the most darkest eyes. And they look like just light, but eyes really black and kind of like little dots where their nose would have been,
Hmm.
almost alien-y. And I then hear in my mind, tell this man he is the survivor, like this like commanding message. And I just then go, you are the survivor. And he's like, what do you mean I'm the survivor? I'm like, no, you are a survivor. And he said, okay. And I said, it feels like, and I start seeing all this stuff in my mind, that you've tried to leave the earth and something is keeping you here. Like that's the intensity of the message. And the guy goes, sorry? And I'm like, did you try to leave the earth intentionally? And then he's like, I've had enough. I've had enough. Stop, 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 stop. And then the angel just disappears. And he was like, I don't know what you're doing here. I don't know what you're meddling with, but I just don't want anything to do with it. And he like gets up and he's like, I need to take a minute. And he's like kind of flapping.
Yeah.
And my mum was like, what happened there? Did you see something? And I was like, I did see some. She's like, we're going to speak about this later when we get home, because she's also like, what the heck is going on? And then later on that night, my mum gets a call and it turns out this guy had actually tried to take his own life several times, had always struggled with his sexuality and kind of fitting in and being accepted and just tried to leave. and every time he tried, something actually stopped him from doing it. Like people came home at the right time, or there was just all these different things that had happened, and he kind of like was touched by this, but also was spooked out by it. But as you know, in small towns, especially, when before social media existed, like word spread fast, but by phone. And the next day, my mum kept getting these phone calls to the house. Hello, and can I speak to the boy who can see angels? Like that's what people kept phoning the house. So, yeah, that's basically what happened. And then, like, over the next few months, I just started doing it for everyone and anyone that was interested in doing it just for free. And by the time I was 17, I'd set up like a business. I actually was given a grant from the government to set up like a spiritual consultancy. And I've still got the same business today.
Incredible. I mean, this is just so wild to hear, and such a young age as well, like for such a young person to process and
I know.
experience, and how accurate it was as well, and intense from the sounds of it. So
Yeah.
my mind's blown, but incredible. So you talk a lot about signs, Kyle, with angels. So how can someone know when an angel is communicating with them versus their own thoughts or imagination? I've heard this a lot in my community of people saying, how do I know it's my angels communicating with me, or it's just I'm thinking
Yeah.
it and my mind's thinking it?
I think first of all, like, um, I think it's important just to like go back a little step. First of all, is like before you even get to how do I know if there's an angel communicating with me? I think there's a lot of people out there who would like to experience an angel, would love to have an encounter or to receive a sign. And as you know, signs are often one of the greatest ways to awaken people and kind of bring them to spirituality. So the main thing I'll always say is not everyone's going to get the intensity that I've just expressed. And the reason that happened is because I called on it. I'm like, if you're here, show yourself. If you're here, give me all these things. But in most cases, the experiences from angels are going to be subtle, and they're going to be gentle, and they're going to be reminding that you are not alone. So I always say to people, if you'd like to experience angels, or you're open to believing in angels, then the willingness to experience them is the best way to get started. Like, just like, I'm willing to have an experience. I'm not sure how I feel about this yet, but if this is real, I would like it to reveal itself to me. So that's the first thing. And then usually in some shape or form, there will be a sign or a reminder that you're not alone. And that's really the purpose of a sign. It's to tell you that you're not alone. And when a sign arrives, and however that may be, it's always one particular message, and it's you are on the right path. Like, that is the purpose of the message. So a lot of people are like, does this sign mean it's the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do? But the signs only arrive when you're in alignment, So I'm sure you talk about that, so like, when you're in alignment and you're like working on something, you're creating something, things start happening. That's like the angels giving you a high five, a thumbs up, a hip thrust, to let you know that things are going well. So the other thing is, a lot of people start to receive direct communication or insight or inspiration. And that's what you were speaking about. How do I know if it's my angels? And the clearest way to know if it's your angels is based on how you feel. If you hear something and there's no promise connected to it, it's your angels. And what I mean by that is, a lot of people hear voices in their head, which is often the ego that says, if you don't do this, something bad is going to happen to you. Or if you do this, it will make you rich. The ego always gives a promise, whereas the angel's inspiration just says, do this. But there's an aspect of trust that has to come with that. So if you get a feeling like, I need to call this person, like, for example, just before this afternoon, I was in the house, I was in my dog walking clothes, and in my head, all I heard was, call Hannah Wallace now. So that's a mutual friend. I pick up the phone. I'm like, hey. And she's like, are you okay? I was like, my angels just told me to call you. And she says, I'm on my way to a funeral and I'm going to be speaking at it today. And I just was like thinking about you. And So, there was no reason to call her. It just said, call Hannah. So I did it. So I feel like when our angels tell us to do something, they'll not tell us why, and they'll not give us a promise or a reason. But if we act on it, then that's good. And if we feel calm when we hear it, that's how to know. But if we feel like anxious and like uptight, it's something else.
Yeah, definitely. And I found that over the years where my angels, it's such a loving, warm presence. And even if it's not the answer I want to hear, it's calming. It's so loving and nurturing as well. Whereas, like you say, the ego, the kind of like limiting beliefs or whatever it is,
That's it,
you know,
limiting beliefs. Yeah.
causes the anxiety, it causes the confliction of and one thing I will say, Kyle, I'll hold my hands up to this, is using signs as emotional crutches. I am like, don't do it, guys, don't do it. I'd be there like, angels, if I'm meant to do this, give me this sign. Angels, if I'm meant to do
Right.
that, give me that sign. And I never got that answer because of the alignment, as you say.
Yeah, because when you're saying that you're not in alignment if you're asking those types of questions. But I'll say this to you, that I don't judge anyone who's had to do that, because I think these moments where we're calling out for that are often like moments where we're on our knees and we're kind of in a surrender and we're kind of unsure and we're scared. And gosh, it's I say to people, it's so much easier to live a life of complacency. It's so much easier to live a negative life. It's so much easier just to like fall into the habits and the patterns. And so if there's something that's going to kind of give you a little bit of a push to start shifting that and changing the narrative and being the first person from your family to go to uni, be a millionaire, write a book, whatever, and you need to say those things at the start, then there's nothing wrong with that. But eventually, these things will pull back, and it's because the angels don't want you to use them as a crutch. They actually want you to stand in your own glory. And I think me and you can both agree on that. Like, we did say those prayers, but eventually we realized that they weren't actually serving the higher purpose that we were on to. And we're kind of forced to, it's like the angels kind of like take away our stabilizers when we're, like anything that's holding us up, so that we can actually see our own capacity and our own ability to make shit happen.
Amen to that. Absolutely. So, Kyle, in your new book, Angels Are With You Now, are there any specific prayers or meditations or rituals in the book that you can recommend for anybody who's just starting out and wants to start working with angels?
So this book, we actually took out pretty much all exercises, and I'll tell you why. Because we want this book to be read from cover to cover, and we don't want people to feel like, oh, there's pressure for me to do this exercise or this thing. But there is something in this book that I've not shared before, which I think you'll really like, which is about in earlier works that I've ever written and read. Everyone always speaks about, if you want to experience angels in your life, you have to ask them. But I'd met many people in my life that had experienced angels and they hadn't called them in the first place. And it was actually, I actually saw you at this event a few years ago. Remember, just after COVID, we all got booked to speak at the Mind Body Spirit Festival, and we were like, everyone was there. It was the busiest weekend I've ever experienced in my life.
Yeah.
Do you remember? We were all there. I remember you there, and we're like, it was just like one of those weekends where we're all jumping from talk to talk, from stage to stage, doing all these different things. And this woman came to me and she said, "Hey, I'd love to speak to you. No one's ever been able to answer this question before. I am a psychotherapist and I've always been interested in spirituality, but I have always kept it at an arm's length because, I work in a clinical setting. I don't want that to, jeopardize my career or my legitimacy as a psychotherapist." She said, "But I was working with this man who was an addict. And I remember he was in my office one day and we tried a lot of different things and he was really at his wit's end. And he was just like so overwhelmed. And in my head, I was like, if there's a God out there, like I really need a way to help this man." And all of a sudden, this angel just appeared in the room. She'd never had any experiences like this before. And this angel just like telepathically told her that the reason he was going through this addiction was to do with this family issue. And she like brought it all up, and he was like, how did you know that about me? And she like kind of essentially did a reading. And then this kind of kick-started this healing for this man, who then ended up going into, remission and from his addiction, and was able to free himself from it. And she always like read all the books on angels that said angels only come to you unless you ask, like, why did the angel come to me? And I realized that not only can we call in angels and ask angels, we can actually attract them as well. And it's through our certain ways of being that actually attract angels towards us. So angels can actually get round the free will if we're attracting them with our good deeds. And it's something that I've started calling the law of divine compensation, where if you do something good, your good deeds build up within you, and these good deeds attract angels towards you. And so one of the things that I always say is that there's 4 pillars or 4 ways to get to the angels or to attract angels in your life. And you don't actually have to be strategic about it. You can just lean into one of these 4 traits and you'll actually pull them towards you. So they're very easy. Authenticity. So if you're truthful, living truthfully, being open and honest in all ways and shapes and forms. Loving without condition, loving without judgment, just loving people anyway, no matter who or why or what. From devotion, if you're devoted to a path or a purpose or even a family. And the last one is service. And that's serving in a way where you're not looking to receive anything in return. If you do one of those 4 things constantly or in your life, they build up this energetic bank in your aura that becomes attractive to angels. And that day, that woman was in complete service, genuine service. I just really want to help this person. And then the angel appeared. So that's something that I've written about in this book.
Amazing. And it's really interesting, Carl, because I've heard, like you, so many people say over the years around, oh, you have to ask, your angels can't, step in free will. You have to set the intention. So it's really interesting you share that, because I think for some people, even asking can feel like a lot or overwhelming sometimes when
Right.
they are in, a desperate situation, or, they don't know where to turn, and they might use the word God, or like you say, it's kind of just an openness to helping.
Something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something bigger than them. So I think that's an amazing way to look at it. And my next question was about the 4 pillars. So you've
Oh,
already,
was it? I'm sorry. I'm just jumping ahead.
well, we know what they are now, which is great. So
Excuse me.
is there any other practical ways that we can start to integrate those pillars into daily life? Have you got any tips?
My favorite pillar of all of them is just authenticity. I think that's the most important thing for me in my life. And I think I'm one of these people that just like overshare by default and just like open up about everything. And I feel like that actually has worked in my favor over the years. Like it doesn't matter if it's like private or business or whatever. I've always just been open about things, because the way I've always looked at it is that nothing can ever be hidden from the divine. It's just like the angel's eyes are on everything. And what I've found is that most people are worried about seeing an angel, but there's actually a spin on that. It's not actually the fear of seeing an angel that's really coming up for us. It's actually about the fear of being seen. So many of us live behind a mask, a pillar. I'm so grateful that we're part of the era on social media that's getting rid of filters.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
Yeah. It's such less pressure, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so cool. And I feel like that's also just like there's a spiritual metaphor there. Like gone are the need for filters now. Like we're really going into this authentic way of being world. So yeah, one of the things I'll always say to people is like, if you would like to see an angel, or if you'd like to experience an angel, allow yourself to be seen. Don't be concerned about how you look, how you appear, if you're not holy enough, or if you're not healed enough, or all these different things. It's just about being seen. And the coolest thing about angels is that everything that I've learned about angels is that they love us anyway. In our darkest moments, in the moments we've made the biggest mistakes, they love us anyway, because if we can just love ourselves in a fraction of the way that they love us, we wouldn't be making those decisions anyway.
Wow.
So I always say to people, go to yourself in the mirror and just say, I am willing to be seen by angels today. Yeah.
I love that. And Kyle is literally proving his psychic abilities right now, because that was the next question. Being seen. He hasn't read the questions, but clearly his intuition is spot on with them.
Stop it. I'm so sorry. I'm a nightmare.
So, Kyle, on that though, although we've already spoken about what if you have the fear of being seen by angels, and that is definitely something I, hand on heart, have feared over the years. Like,
Have you?
yeah, like I'm always like, I love hearing angels, like whether it's intuition, using your angel numbers book, your angel numbers cards, like love that. But the one thing that I am like, is like if a random angel just appeared. Yeah. So I know I'm blocked to it, which is why I'm going to try what you just said. But I thought it's really interesting how you said it's a fear of being seen. Because ironically, that is something I'm also working on this year that I've identified.
Your visibility.
Yeah. So I was like, that makes so much sense now. You've said it.
There's another part, there's another layer to that, and it's actually I love scripture. Like, I'm not like Christian or religious, but I really love reading all these things, and I like to like kind of like the Da Vinci Code, like peel it apart. But when Mother Mary saw Gabriel the archangel, when supposedly she was going to become the mother of Christ, Gabriel then said to Mary, do not be afraid, for I am an angel of the Lord. And I always like look back at that. I'm like, why was Mary being told to not be afraid? Was she scared of seeing angels too? Because I think a lot of people out there are. And truth being told, it wasn't actually about seeing the angel. It was actually about being that powerful, because the moment that you actually see an angel for yourself is the moment that your entire spiritual power comes back to you. You don't need the guides, the astrologers, the psychics, the seers, you don't need that. You might want to have it, but you don't need it. It's the moment you actually become your own visionary. And so some of us, and especially women, have felt that more, because in previous times, like, women were burnt at the stake for that, And so here, when Mary received it, it was because she was like the woman in amongst a society that only trusted the words of men who were prophets and rabbis. And so the angel's like, do not be afraid, not because I'm an angel, do not be afraid of seeing me and being this powerful, because your voice is going to be judged, So I don't blame you for having that concern, is my main thing, is the truth. And I guess I'm a total feminist here, I don't blame you for feeling like that, but I think the fear is also the kind of the magnitude of your own spiritual power that's kind of like waiting to be fully embodied. And I think that's our life's work, really.
Yeah.
I'll tell you about me though. I turn the lights off and I wait for them. I do.
I love how you're just like straight from being like a teenager, like, show yourselves to me, like zero fear whatsoever.
When my mum passed away, the night she passed away, I was in my room with the lights off, and I'm like, hi mum, you're welcome to come through. I was just like totally ready for it in all moments.
Yeah. And how has that transition been? Because obviously, for anybody listening, Carl's mum passed away last year, which Diane was just an absolute icon. We loved her.
Oh, yeah. It was, the angels appeared before my mum passed away when she was at home, actually. And it was a Saturday afternoon, and I was looking at my mum, and I saw this dark figure. And, when, again, having these angel bump moments that I speak about when I see the angels, I saw this dark figure, and I was a little bit concerned because it was so dark. It was like hooded and dark. And that night I went into meditation, and I was like, why was the angel so dark? And then I heard the message, if the angel was to reveal their light, you would be blinded. If they were to remove their hood, you would see their shining face. Wow. And I was like, whoa. So I knew that the angel was of pure light. And then the next day, the doctor said to me, your mum's probably not got more than a year left in her. That same day, we 999 called. The next day, they say your mum's only got a few months. The next day, it's only a few weeks. The next day, it was only a few days. and by the following Wednesday she'd passed away. So this angel like appeared to kind of like tell me that they were coming, and I saw the angel every other day. And then it was just one night a family friend said, hey, just go to jiu-jitsu, just go and like be yourself. I'll stay with your mum tonight and you can come in fresh in the morning. I was rolling on the mat in jiu-jitsu and the voice just went, go and see your mum now. And I was like, I'm on my way. And I just like followed that voice, and it was the next morning she passed away. It was our last night together and we watched Below Deck.
Oh.
Yeah, so angels have always been a big part of our lives, and my mum knew where she was going, but she also didn't really want to discuss it. And so she just asked me to kind of like handle all the finer details of like helping her cross over and all the things. And yeah, and then she came back the next day. So through that sign that, I don't know if you saw it on Instagram, where she gave me a password which was sausages, and she said, if I get to heaven, I'll send you back the word sausages. And she sent it back the next day through her family friend that was a minister.
So powerful and so comforting as well to know.
Yeah, it honestly feels to me like this was my next awakening, like losing my mother, which was my greatest fear. Like growing up in a single parent household, it's just the two of you your entire life, no siblings or anything. And then like having that loss, I actually feel like was my next awakening. And now I can actually really put my work into practice. Like I genuinely still experience my mother, but she's not here physically. It's big.
Yeah. And like you say, a whole new awakening into a whole new era.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about manifesting, because it wouldn't be my podcast if we didn't talk about manifesting.
Which is your thing. You're the manifestation maven.
So can angels help us in our manifesting our desires? And if so, how can we work with them to attract more abundance and manifestations into our life?
I ask, my practice is speaking to angels, and I have evolved this over the years. But when I first learned about the angels, I was like, thank you, angels, for bringing me a Mini Cooper S, and I would call in these things. And I tend to always get whatever I ask for. But there was somewhere along the way where my prayers stopped being answered. And I remember saying, angels, why am I not getting my prayers answered? And I heard the message, because there's a great difference from what you want and what you need. And so one of the things that I started doing and shifting in my own practice was, instead of asking for things, I started asking for feelings. For example, say you wanted like a Porsche 911, and I'm just using trivial things because I think it's always easier to direct it. The reason that we want the Porsche 911 might be because it looks cool, because it helps us feel free, and so all these different things. And I realized that if I wanted a certain thing, it was because it was going to make me feel a certain way. So I started asking the angels in prayer for helping me feel that way. So I'd be like, thank you, angels, for helping me feel free. Thank you, angels. And then what I found was everything I needed and more was given to me anyway. So I genuinely feel that. And angels see energy in all forms, they see currency and exchanges as energy in all forms. And they're not up or down whether you get something or not. They're more up or down if you can really fully embody gratitude, because that's what's going to bring you to miracles. So the answer is yes, angels can help us do that. But you can ask them for emergency things like, I need you to place your healing hands on this family member. But you can also be like, hey, angels, I would really love this experience. So thank you for helping me feel that way now so that I can bring it into my life. And they will.